Let's head up to Queensland now, stay with politics, where Jim Chalmers has had a dig at our Friday regular Campbell Newman. Now, apparently at a private gathering of the Transport Workers Union, Jim Chalmers warned that Queensland opposition leader David Crisafulli, who odds on will win the next election up there in October, that he would this is a direct quote from Chalmers, absolutely gut Queensland like a fish if he gets the chance to do it, just like Campbell Newman did. This is what's at stake here in Queensland, Chalmers said, before we go to a federal election after that. Seems like he's running a bit scared. Former Queensland Premier and the person who had his finger pointed at him, Campbell Newman, joins me now. That was a bit nasty, wasn't it, from Treasurer Chalmers?
Yeah, well, look, very nasty. But he said nasty stuff before, but really the most important thing, Steve, is the hyperbole. I mean, I think the media finally are waking up to who Jim Chalmers really is. He's got this nice boy image, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. He's always smiling, but he delivers this sort of nonsense. I mean, once I saw him on the Insiders on a Sunday morning saying, referring to the atrocities of the Newman government. For the record, if Queensland was gutted, well, I don't know what that really means other than he's just there to support public sector unionised workers, because what we achieved was the best performing hospitals in the nation, the best surgery waiting times. We limited ambulance ramping. We kicked the bikies out of the state. We created a 30-year plan for Queensland, and the crime, when we kicked the bikies out, went down 15 to 20% across all the serious categories of offences against people and property. So that's the record. We contrast that with the hyperbole, and really it's showing great desperation. That's really what I put it down to, because he's lashing out now at like he's got this fight going on with the Reserve Bank governor, and it's all to distract from the fact that this guy has badly managed the economy and the finances of the nation. One other thing I'll just say, because it is a bit personal, I will debate Jim Chalmers anytime he likes on the track record of my government. I bet you he won't show up because it's threadbare. He would not last half an hour with me, and I make that challenge to him this evening. So let's see if he fronts up, if he wants to talk about my track record. By the way, David Crisafulli's made it very clear he's not Campbell Newman. And while I'm unclear about what he will do on a range of these issues, he has said to the Queensland Media Club that he won't be cutting the public service. So I don't know where Chalmers is coming from.
How do you think he's going?
David Crisafulli's
going? What are the polls saying?
Well, mate, as you know, I've been a bit of a critic. I have criticised them for not articulating clearly their policies, but over the last 2 or 3 weeks, he has made some important policy announcements. They've also run some ads, and I think he's looking pretty good. So at this stage, short of some sort of disaster, I think he will become the next Premier.
He, as you know, image is pretty important in election campaigns, and he looks energised. He looks young, fit and energised. And, I know that doesn't mean he can run the state properly, but compared to Premier Miles, he looks like he's a bloke ready to do it.
Well, he does look like that. And he was a minister in my government, and he was a good minister, and he achieved some really important things. One I'd point out is that he was in charge of disaster recovery after the terrible flood event that we had in Bundaberg back in 2013. So, I've had a lot of time for him. That's why I've been so sort of perturbed about this small target strategy, because I just don't agree with it fundamentally. But I saw a guy when he was in office as a minister in my government with the goods, the ability to deliver, and that energy you've just referred to. And he is aggressive. And I mean that in a nice way. You've got to have a level of aggression in politics. And he wants to actually, get stuff done. I'm pretty sure of that. But again, I'm not clear about what he is going to do, because on many occasions he hasn't told Queenslanders, and that does bother me.
Just back on Campbell, back on Jim Chalmers briefly. I mean, he's picked a fight with the Reserve Bank, and I don't know who's advising him politically to suggest that's a good idea. It might play, I guess, with people who don't follow those things as closely as others. But, I mean, the Reserve Bank has made the point, the Governor, Shell Bullock, has made the point quite clearly that when you look at the GDP, and one of the reasons why inflation's not coming down, it's because of the amount of dough that Chalmers is dishing out in benefits to people to help with their energy bills and government infrastructure spending by state governments. So on the one hand, she's trying to slow the car down. On the other hand, Jim Chalmers and Treasury are trying to speed it up. The two things can't work together, can they?
Well, they can't. And I think one of the coalition front bench, I forget who it was, but in the last few days had the analogy about when you do that to a machine or a motor vehicle, you will blow the thing up. And that's what Jim Chalmers is doing. It is absolutely without dispute that government spending has increased. It's beyond dispute that as a share of GDP, the tax take has gone up to historically high levels. It's beyond dispute that Australians' standard of living is down by about 10% and household savings have gone to almost nothing. That's his doing. And, he might want to fool people by this sort of game of criticising the RBA and also handing out cash on the one hand. But I think ultimately will come home to roost. People sort of have this distrust of politicians. And whilst, public servants aren't perhaps in, the highest regard, they are held in much higher regard, I can tell you that right now, than politicians. So when someone in the post of the Governor of the Reserve Bank is saying it's a problem, then, well, it is. And I think ultimately he loses that sort of political fight.
Campbell, we talked about this hydro project in Queensland before. News out that 50 properties bought for that pumped hydro project could be sold back to residents if the plan is scrapped. The government-owned entity is not saying at what cost. Now, this is becoming less of a reality, this thing, isn't it?
Well, it was always a fantasy, I'm afraid. And the reason I've always said that, I've said it to you and your viewers before, is that back in the 2000s, when we had a drought in southeast Queensland, we were running out of water. We were down to 15% of their dams. And the Traveston Dam, and this is a repeat of the Traveston debacle, the Traveston Dam was stopped on environmental grounds by Peter Garrett and the then Rudd government because of the lungfish. Now, this valley, the Pioneer River Valley, west of Mackay, heading up to the Ungala sort of high range, is a pristine, beautiful valley, cane farming and fantastic forest, and it's a platypus habitat. Now, there was no way, just no way with our current environmental laws that this would ultimately have got up. It would have been stopped. I mean, you just have to look around the nation these days. Any environmentally significant animal or plant will be enough to stop projects. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm just talking about the practicalities of the way the law stands in Australia today. The environment comes first, the needs of our society come second, and needs of jobs and economic growth come second. But that's what's going to happen here. It won't get up on environmental grounds. It just won't. And I think they're going to end up, like with Traveston, having to sell a whole lot of property back to some very lucky people, because I'm sure they won't be paying the same amount of money to get it back that the government paid them to take it in the first place.
Well, this is going to be part of the problem, isn't it, with our, blind rush to renewables? I mean, the amount of wind turbines required, the amount of solar panels required. We saw that massive project that's been ticked off outside of Darwin, 800 kilometres southwest of Darwin. This is going to be an issue going forward that I'm not sure that the federal government or the state governments or local councils have even really thought enough about. I mean, you're going to have you've already got regional farmers saying, I don't want transmission lines through my property. You can nick off. I don't care what you pay me. I keep talking about this, but no one seems to actually say, oh, hang on a minute. If we need all of this renewable energy, we've got to have places to put it. They're going to have huge complaints from people, aren't they?
This is the industrialisation of the Australian natural landscape, whether it be the impact on great farming land, grazing country, etc., or natural areas, forested areas, the top of the Great Dividing Range, where we're blasting those mountaintops, building these massive towers, access roads, and actually destroying the habitat of protected species. I think it's going to come to a head, mate, because it just must be stopped. My Libertarian Party colleagues who are running for the Senate, Jim Wilmot and Lachlan Wade, are pointing this out. They've been out there, as I have, saying the alternative really has to be nuclear. That's how, if you believe in climate change, and I am a skeptic, but if you do want to go to clean power, low emissions, then ultimately we've got to go to nuclear. And rather than destroy natural areas and farmland in this wholesale way, we actually concentrate, using the existing footprints of our coal-fired power stations, go from coal to nuclear, as Peter Dutton's been saying. And that is the way to go. And it is more environmentally responsible. I think as people start to learn about what's going on really, they'll realise that they've been sold a pup on this one. It is incredibly destructive.
I think that's right. Have a great weekend, Campbell. I'll talk to you in a couple of Fridays' time.